all good to go now. So, hi to everyone who joins in today. Want to introduce you all to Meredith Jaffe. So, thanks, Meredith, for joining us.
Thank you for having me on a Sunday morning, Jackie.
And just a quick intro about Meredith. So, Meredith is the author of 3 novels for adults. Her latest is The Dressmakers of Yarrandara, The Dressmakers of Yarrandara Prison. And she's also written The Making of Christina and The Fence, House Warrior, and her first in the children's series was published in 2019. She also contributed a short story, Emergency Undies, to the 2019 anthology Funning Bones. She is the festival director of Story Feast, held on the New South Wales South Coast, and regularly facilitates in other writers' festivals and author events. Previously, she wrote the weekly literature column for the online women's magazine The Hoopla, and her feature articles, reviews, and opinion pieces have also appeared in The Guardian, The Huffington Post, and Mamma Mia. So thanks for joining us, and for those watching as well, just letting you know that thanks to HarperCollins, if you ask a question during the Facebook Live, you'll have a chance to win a copy of The Dressmakers of Yarrandara Prison. So to do that, just type your questions in comments. And just want to say that I have been reading your book and really loved it. It's quite an interesting subject that it's about. So thanks, Meredith. Just wondering if you want to tell us a little bit first about your latest book and maybe where the idea came from.
Sure. So basically, the Dressmakers of Yarrandara Prison follows the fortunes of 3 main prisoners. There's Derek, who's in his early 50s. He's in jail because he embezzled funds from the local golf club and got caught. And he stole the money to fund his gambling habit. He belongs to a sewing group in the prison called Backtackers, and it's run by a charity called Connecting Threads. I'll talk about that a bit later. Then we have the Doc. The Doc is in for life. He's a murderer. He's in jail for murdering little old ladies in their beds. He's also the prisoner librarian, so he also plays a key role. He's not a very nice person. He's a bit of a grump, and he thinks he's better than everyone else because he's the Doc, and he's also the jail Scrabble champion. And then we have Joey Maloney. Joey's very young. He's sort of like early 20s. He did a nasty crime that you don't find out until the very end what that is. But he's been moved to Yarrandara Prison to serve out the last few months of his sentence. He's due for parole at the end of the year, just before Christmas. So his main objective in the story is to get out of there with a good record and never have to see the back of the place again. So these are my sort of 3 protagonists that all come together around the making of the wedding dress at the centre of the story. And the wedding dress is because Derek's 21-year-old daughter is getting married. That is what kicks off the whole book. His sister-in-law Sharon, because his wife divorced in the moment he got sentenced, his sister-in-law Sharon comes in to tell him, Debbie's getting married. What are you going to do about it? A girl never forgets her wedding day. You're not going to be there to walk her down the aisle, so you're going to have to think of something pretty damn fine to make up for the fact that you won't be there, and to show her how much you love her. So that's kind of like the overarching kind of idea. And where it came from is a bit more obtuse. When I was at the Hoopla, I was preparing to interview Esther Freud, the British actor and writer. She wrote Hideous Kinky. It was her memoir about growing up in her slightly madball family, I suppose, oddball family. She's the daughter of the painter Lucian Freud and the great-granddaughter of Sigmund Freud, the psychologist, psychotherapist. So I was preparing to interview Esther about her new book, and I was reading through, as you do, you trawl through Google, and I found this article she wrote for The Guardian on a group called Find Cell Work. And Find Cell Work is a British charity. They call themselves a social enterprise now. And that was founded by a person called Lady Anne Tree, and it was set up to facilitate volunteers going into British prisons and teaching the men the fine art of sewing. So men, because like Australia, 93-94% of the prison population is male, and they were living in conditions that she felt were not doing nothing to help them come to terms with what they'd done as their crimes, any sort of personal or emotional rehabilitation. So she thought, if we send in some stitches, some volunteer stitches, they teach the men the fine art of needlework. So we're talking high-end tapestry, cross stitch, petty point, all that sort of, those sorts of skills, and quilting. Then we can flog those cushions in the top shops, she used to call them, and show that people can be bigger than their crimes. And so that's kind of how Fine Cell started. And I was reading all about this. I'm looking at all their beautiful work that they do, and they've got stuff that hangs in the Victoria and Albert Museum and Buckingham Palace, and all sorts of people have them, cushions thrown all over their lounges and beds. And they do work for the National, or not the National Trust, the English Heritage Trust as well. So they do, to replace beautiful old needlework that is in medieval castles and old homes and things. And I'm reading all of this, and my first thought was, wouldn't it be amazing if one of these guys turned around and decided to make his daughter's wedding dress? It just had nothing to do with the article. They don't make dresses. They literally do cushions and quilts and that kind of stuff. But that was the thought that went into my, the thought worm that popped up. And so I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. I think that's a great idea for a story. And then I told my husband this, and he said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. It'll never work. How are they going to know a measurement? How's she going to model it? How are they going to get the fabrics? We're talking needles, scissors, all sorts of stuff. And I was like, good point. But instead of being something to stop me, it was kind of like, right, well, how do I overcome the obstacles to make it authentic, that it could actually happen in the story?
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting about the UK group. Is there anything in Australia at all that you're aware of that is similar?
No, nothing at all. And I think, wouldn't it be wonderful though if the outcome of this book and it took on a life of its own, and that because I actually do talk to Fine Cell work in the UK, and since I did that research on Esther, which was back in 2014, she's now become a patron of Fine Cell work, and to the point that she had her play premiere last September called Stitches, and then the other person who's been involved is Tracy Chevalier, who wrote The Girl with the Pearl Earring and How to Make an American Quilt. And she got involved because she wrote How to Make an American Quilt. They said, Fine Cell Work said to her, oh, come into a Wandsworth. And when she saw the work that the volunteers were doing, she was blown away as well. And so she worked with them on the Sleep Quilt, which is one of the major pieces that hangs at the Victoria and Albert Museum. So, and this is a quilt where the men made 63 different squares, and so they had to embroider onto their square what sleep meant to them in jail. And I guess for those of us who've spent any long time in hospital, for instance, it sounds a bit similar, that there's always noise and lights and something going on and interruptions, and if you layer on top of that, you've got your personal demons. You're sharing a cell with some people that you may not feel comfortable with, and all those other sort of different factors. Sleep is like a major issue, and insomnia in particular. And so this sleep quilt is made up of all these different squares of these men's experience with sleep, and that was a major project Tracy worked on, and she then put together, she wrote the foreword for the book, The Sleep Quilt, that came out of it as well. So it's clearly something that really resonates with creative people.
Yeah. And has anyone contacted you at all from the prisons in Australia?
Sort of, but not yet. I've had a photo sent to me from a senior custodial officer at Silverwater Jail holding the book, and apparently it's going into the jail there, which I'm pretty chuffed about.
Yeah, that's good.
But look, it's very early days yet, Jackie.
Yeah, because it's only
weeks,
just
so let's see how it unfolds. But wouldn't it be amazing if we had Fine Cell work in Australia, or we could actually have connecting threads? I'm happy to, give them the name.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be interesting to see what eventuates from it, really. And Yarrandara, is that a real place?
No, not at all. I wanted, because you know how so many places in Australia have those really long names like Yarrandara, and they could be pronounced, Canawindra is Canoundra, those kind of places that are, so always seem to be out in the middle of whoop whoop. and always seem to have these names that you're never quite sure, like, is it Kurindi, or, those kind of things where all those kind of names where you go, I'm not quite sure how I say that. So I kind of wanted to give that feel. I was quite careful to make sure it wasn't a real place, because not every town wants to be associated with a jail. And although I live in an area where we do have a jail locally, it's not everyone's idea of country life, is it?
Excuse me. Yeah. And where would you imagine Yarrandara would be?
I kind of, in my mind, I sort of think that real central Australia, central west kind of parts of, it's sort of dry country, and it's it's definitely inland, and it's definitely hard to get to. It kind of has to be sort of near a train line, because Sharon in the novel it's a 3.5 hour trip out there, so you've got to catch the train. It is, where I live, it's probably about a 3-hour train ride from the city, and then there's a bus that connects you from the train to the jail. And I kind of just morphed that across to Yarrandara. But yeah, far enough away that it's not, it also has to be physically far enough away to stop it being easy to visit any of the prisoners for the story to work as well. So as a literary device, I needed Sharon and the other characters to have to really want to go out to visit Derek, in this case, at the jail.
Yeah. And we've got quite a few people watching, which is great. And I've got lots of questions coming through. So I'll ask some questions from some of our members. So Mary's wondering if someone has inspired your writing.
As in another author, or I guess,
I think
is that
so,
what Mary meant? Yeah. I find lots of writers' work inspiring. I'm quite, as they say, Catholic in my tastes. I read, at the moment, I'm reading an old Maggie O'Farrell novel. She's a writer. I mean, I loved Hamnet. Loved the way she puts a sentence together, and thought, I really should read more of her back catalogue. So I'm reading This Must Be the Place at the moment. But one of my favourite Australian writers is Jock Sarong. I think I fell in love with Jock's writing with The Rules of Backyard Cricket. So I don't have a particular genre or person that I stick to. I just love to read great writing. I love to see how other writers approach an issue, or build character or plot or structure. So I sort of look at all the reading rather that I do, and sort of research on writing. And even if I sort of go, I just didn't feel that worked, then I really like to know. And I think this goes back to my days at the Hoopla, when I was reviewing all the time. I was, reading, 2-3 books a week. If it didn't work, I really wanted to know why it didn't work. And so it doesn't mean that the book isn't wildly popular. There's always books that go on to do amazing things that we don't all love. And if any of you belong to things like the ABC Book Club or all those kind of things, there's always debate going on about a book that could be number one in the bestseller charts. And people go, I hated it. It's the same when you're on Goodreads, isn't it? And you look and you go, you look at your reviews and you get, X number of 5-star, Y number of 4-star, and you'll always get like the odd, hopefully the odd 1 or 2 stars. You're like, what did they just think of the book at all? But you can't take it personally either, that kind of stuff. But that's slightly off topic to Mary's question. But no, I don't have a writer who's an inspiration. Although another thing I would say, Mary, is that when you look at people like the careers of people like Marion Keyes and Leanne Moriarty and stuff, I mean, that of course is inspiring. And more recently with Natasha Lester's sort of, almost, it's sort of atomic rise to fame that's happened with her last couple of books. It's very inspiring to see people do well and succeed.
Yeah. And Mary has another question as well. She's wondering, like, you did speak a little bit about some of the research you did for the book, but what other research did you do? And was there anything that you learnt that surprised you?
So first things first, I did tons of research because I haven't been to prison. I actually wanted to go to first of all, my local prison. That was denied me after there was a breakout there, very similar to the one that happens in the novel. Actually, it did involve wheelie bins. and that was they clamped down on any visitation there. And then I also organised to go to a Long Bay jail, and then COVID happened, and so there's no visitors allowed in prisons, and obviously that's been going on since March last year. So that kind of meant that I was really I had to use lots of Google research on looking at video and looking at photographic, evidence. And I was really more interested in the progressive side of the prison system than I was of sort of the archetypal, gritty prison drama style. So I did a lot of research along those lines. I read a lot of PhDs. I read, so you're going to prison handbooks, or so your family members going to prison. I read policy. Anything and everything. It's I suppose it's an insurance policy a little bit when you're a writer. Research can take you down a lot of rabbit holes, and there's some argument against how much research do you need to do. And I suppose writers would always go, you need the little detail. And one of the little details that was really important to me was the food that they were eating.
Okay.
And because it's sort of like, you do like a bit like hospital food or airline food, just have sort of that institutionalized view of the food, don't you? And so, I'd read a PhD on nutrition in prisons and what the food would look like. One of the things you quickly learn, actually the sad thing about that is that our prisoners eat better than our old people in our retirement villages and nursing homes, which is a different argument. I'll leave that for Maggie Beer. But one of the things that's really interesting is that you soon start to realise that, I live in the state of New South Wales. The rules here are different to the state in Queensland, Western Australia, etc., because like our education system, prisons are run on a state-by-state basis. So you do get variance between states. You also get variance between prisons which are in the country which may have their own dairy or vegetable gardens or piggery or whatever, versus those that might be more urban and therefore have the food shipped in as a complete meal. You've also got issues around if you're of a particular religious or ethnic group that might need or want particular foods, that can become problematic as well. So it's sort of, like I say, you can go down a rabbit hole with any topic that you choose, whether it's what toiletries are they allowed, to what clothing are they issued, how does it work in terms of visitors and phones and all those kind of things. There's a lot to do to kind of create that, it's world building in a way, isn't it? To create that sort of an authentic environment. Yeah. I'm pleased to say, though, that I've had it read by senior custodial officers and people who've worked in the prisons, and it is authentic. Okay, so that's good. It feels like a tick of approval.
Yeah. And would you say, is it set in current times, would you say?
Yeah. I didn't really want it to be tied to a particular year, because I don't feel like at the moment, I read Rachel John's latest novel the other week, How to Mend a Broken Heart, and she says in that, look, this isn't a New Orleans without COVID, and obviously that's not the world we live in. And I was reflecting on that, because I would say that the Dressmakers of Yarrandara is the same. It's it is contemporary. We're not talking about pre-mobile phones or pre-IT or anything, but equally it's not reflective of the world that we're in this second either. Do you want it to be either? I suppose is another answer. I was thinking about that with Rachel's comment in her book. It's like, I don't know. I mean, particularly for our friends in Melbourne at the moment, they probably don't want any reminders, do they?
Yeah, we want to be taken away from that, really, don't we?
Yeah.
Jill's wondering if you have a writing routine.
I do. And I'm really good at sticking to it almost most of the time. I remember when I asked these questions, it's like, well, do you mean on my ideal day, or do you mean on the reality? Like the planned schedule and the secret schedule of what actually happens. I am a writer who likes to write in the mornings, for sure. That's when I'm at my most dazzling. You're getting me at my best now. I fade rapidly from about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I sort of tend to, and I also have other things that I do. So I tend to write. The moment the kids go to school, I'm at my desk, got a coffee going, and I just focus and I write for about 4 or 5 hours. Sometimes I do word count. Sometimes I do time, depending on what else is happening in that day. But even if I have got stuff that, like we all do, when you think, oh great, my diary's clear, and then suddenly 25 million things pop in and you have to deal with them, I still try and work on, at least, even if it's just an hour. Other days I look at my diary and just go, what's the point? I may as well just focus on all those other things that need to happen and do writing the other day. So and I also don't write every day. I know that a lot of writing advice says you should write every day. I don't know if that always works for everyone. And I found the more I write, the less inclined I am to write every day. So I sort of tend to write. I work 6 days a week as a rule, and I tend to, and I have 2 days which I do my other job, which is the festival director job. And I try to put those, so one day's a Monday, one day's a Thursday. So I break up my writing day, and I find my writing days. So I find that if I write, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday kind of thing, and sometimes Sunday, then it kind of keeps me fresher and I get more energy in my work. And energy in your writing is probably the most critical thing, not how many hours or how many words you write, but how much energy is going into what you're doing. So there's a few of those kind of things that go on, and sometimes you're on deadline and all those rules go out the window. And I'm on deadline for Tuesday, for instance, and I'll be writing the rest of today because have I finished it yet? No. So, it just depends on where you're at in the cycle as well. But if you're just starting out and you're not published and you don't have deadlines and contracts and all that, then you just find a time of day that suits you best and write then, would always be my advice. And and don't beat yourself up if you can't do it every day, because it's more about keeping the flow and writing regularly than it is about forcing yourself to write every day. Even though I am a fan of bum glue, which is like just you don't get to get up from your desk just because it's not working that day.
Yeah. No, that's good advice. Could you tell us a bit about how you became to be a writer? Is it something that you'd always thought you wanted to do? And did you do any formal training?
So it's a bit of both. So I always wrote as a child. I didn't think of it as writing in that sort of active sense. It was just what I did. I wrote poetry, I wrote little stories. I liked doing plays and stuff as well. So I sort of gravitated towards drama. A lot of the texts at school are quite dry, and a lot of the stuff I was reading outside of school was sort of Agatha Christie and Gerald Durrell, when I was in sort of a bit old. I loved all those Gerald Durrell books. I've been particularly enjoying the Durrells on the TV at the moment with my family and other animals. And I read, a bit, like I said before, my taste is all over the place. And then through high school, I did drama, and I did, obviously did English. And then when I finished school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I came from a family where no one had been to university, so my dad was like, "You've got to go to uni. You got into uni. You have to go," kind of thing. I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I did an arts degree, and I majored in English literature and sociology. So that's a really good grounding, because you're doing all that stuff you probably wouldn't necessarily pick up. So 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th century English literature. Sadly, the way uni was structured when I went through, you couldn't pick up a unit of French literature or Russian literature or anything, which is a bit sad. But anyway, good grounding in very English and American literature. And when I finished, and I did do drama as well at uni, and then when I finished, I said to my parents, I want to be a writer, and that's what I want to do. And my parents said, don't be stupid, get a day job. And because I was a good girl, I did. And that was kind of it for writing then. And, my life went off on its own trajectory. I got a real job, became an expert in superannuation, I got married, had a kid, all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until, obviously always an avid reader and stuff like that, but it wasn't until I was having my fourth child, or my third child, our fourth together, that I went, it's sort of now or never. Like, I'm going to be, the GFC had hit. I was running my own business. I was like, I didn't want to be exposed to the GFC. I closed the business down. I was heavily pregnant, had 4 kids at home, and went, what am I going to do with my time? Which is weird. I think I meant intellectually, not what I'm going to do with my day. And then I just that was it. That was sort of like the now or never moment, which is really, really common with women writers, that we look for that. You know, there's an impetus. I know I was talking about this with Lauren Chader the other day, who wrote the Lace Weaver and Gulliver's Wife, and exactly the same thing. It's like, now if I don't do this while I'm on maternity leave, you know, when I've got this window, then it will never happen. And I'll, you know, you have to live with the regret then, don't you? Like, what might have been.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like, speaking to other authors, it's something that I've really found as well. A lot have said that that's happened to them. Jill's wondering what if you're working on a current book at the moment.
Jill, it's due in on Tuesday. I certainly am. I'm also one of those people that I don't like to write the same thing every time. I like to keep myself fresh as well. Like, so that might be, so this time, for instance, I wrote, because, you know, there's always that tension with writers about whether we're a pantser or a planner. And I have got to an age and stage, I'm 56, so I've got to an age and stage, it's like, you know, it's taken me, so Dressmakers of Yarrandale Prison was a 4-year project, which is not extraordinarily long, but it's not exactly snapping it out either. And I was like, I just wonder if I maybe invested a little bit more in planning, that I might speed up the process a bit. When you don't plan, it's fine. Like, I can whip out a first draft of a novel in well and truly under 10 weeks. But then all the work is in the editing, because then you go, oh, that didn't work, and it's because you've already knitted it all, you've got to unravel it and re-knit it. And so the editing process is where the time is spent. Whereas I thought, if I plan, then I will have ironed out all the structural issues and the plot and the character, and then I can just focus on the writing. So that's what I'm doing this time around. So my first draft was really a 30,000 word long form plan, and then the draft I'm working on that's due on Tuesday is really only the first long form draft, but it's sort of been written. You know what I mean? Like, I'll write it, I'll go back the next time, I'll read from the top of that chapter or the top of that scene, and I'll edit as I go, and then I'll keep going on from there. So it's been a different process, but the good news is I started that in September, and it's now only May. So it's handing in on the 1st of June.
So it's worked for you.
But Jackie, the publisher, could still come back and go, what is this rubbish? It's you know, the writing process itself is all like, you know, in a huddle, like, you know, when those kids at school that put their hand around and they scribble their exam result, you know, their answers to the questions that no one else could copy. It's sort of like, you know, you write the novel in secret. It's like, oh, I don't know if it's working, but you get to the point, it's like, I can't stand it any longer. Someone else has to read it, and then once it goes to the publisher, if you're lucky enough to be under contract, then it becomes a conversation where they go, what were you really thinking when you... and you go, probably wasn't thinking at all, to be honest. So it becomes that kind of thing. So I'm kind of looking forward to handing it in whatever shape it's in on Tuesday. Of course, it's in excellent shape, Anna, if you're listening. And then having her come back and go, her problem, you see, becomes her problem, not my problem for a while.
And are you able to tell us anything about what your new book's about?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't really answer that part of the question. So this time I'm writing I don't know if you follow those sort of Facebook groups, like, you know, where everyone talks about what they're reading. So often it comes up that there's not a book for women in their 50s and 60s that's not where they're a grandmother, or they're, you know, they've lost their mojo, or they're, you know, like, everything's sort of wrong, you know, like as if it's sort of some sort of disease to be a menopausal or postmenopausal woman. And as one of those women, I feel that, you know, I'm well within my rights to write a love story for women our age, and actually have it all about, you know, being gorgeous and fun and sexy and entertaining and all those kind of things. So I've sort of got it's a relationship where they've downsized from the marital home where the kids were born and raised type thing to an apartment. And so it's that transition phase where Diana, who's the main character, realizes, you know, this is it, final, like the kids have left, even though they've actually left, you know. It's like, it's that metaphor, isn't it? It's like, if I'm in the apartment and all the you know, all the memorabilia is now in boxes. It's kind of like it is a new beginning, but it can be quite daunting as well. You're redefining yourself as a woman, you're redefining your roles, and you're redefining your marriage as well, because I don't know about everyone else, but if we didn't have children, we'd have nothing to fight about. So it's about that rekindling, and like I wanted to write a love story, that not so much the Ali McGraw, Ryan O'Neill, love stories that we all loved back from the sort of 60s, but so it was something that was sort of resonate as a modern love story, and it's also got a mystery in it as well to be solved. So
yeah.
I don't know what genre it is, just just the story that came to me. That's what I wrote.
No, that sounds really good, and like you said, not probably too many books written about that sort of subject, so yeah, sounds good. Jenny's got a really good question, something that I've been thinking about as well. So Jenny says, what is the must-attend events at the upcoming Story Feast?
Jenny obviously knows who I am. So Storyfest, for those of you not in the know, is the so we call it Storyfest South Coast. It's we call it the art of celebrating storytelling. So it's in all its forms. So we have books, we have music, we have dance, we have poetry, we have obviously fiction. When I say fiction, non-fiction, so we have people who are subject matter experts. So we try and look at the storytelling form in a much broader way than you would normally experience to just a Readers and Writers Festival. So maybe to give you some flavour for that, for those of you who would love to come to the South Coast of New South Wales for a weekend, of course you do. So we have workshops on the Fridays. If I'm a budding writer out there and you've got an idea for a novel, then we have Louise Thurtell running the craft of editing. Louise used to be the commissioning editor for Allen and Unwin, and she set up that Friday pitch that they used to, I think they still run.
Yeah.
And we've also got Lee Kaufman doing the art of memoir. So Lee's got a memoirist herself. She's a great writing teacher. And we've got digital storytelling and poetry and stuff. Opening night is Marcus Suzak, so that's always a joy and a pleasure. He's actually going to be doing something slightly different. He's not going to be talking about a book. He's going to be talking about the books that change us, like how reading and writing and all that, which I think will be wonderful. We have Tanya Plibersek coming to talk about the book she edited. So there was a book out last year called Upturn, A Better Normal After COVID-19, obviously a hot topic. So Tanya's edited that, and I guess it goes to that idea that we've been talking about for some time now about what will life look like after COVID. Do we want to go back to normal? With the Prime Minister constantly saying, we'll get back to normal. And some of us are going, I don't know, like tracky dacks and working from home is not as bad as I thought it would be. So that'll be a really interesting session. And equally another one, which is not so much around a book, but an idea. So Malcolm Knox, the Walkley Award winning journalist, wrote a book last year called Truth is Trouble around the Israel Folau issue, around freedom of speech and what you can and can't say, and how that works in a world with social media and the sort of hyper connectivity that we all have. And I just thought it would be a fun topic for debate. And so Wendy Harmer from ABC 702 Breakfast Programs, Malcolm Knox, because he wrote the book, David Hunt, the historian, and Nikki Gemmell, the journalist, will be in the spotlight to talk about freedom of speech, which I think will be a really great session as well. But then we have got literary as well. We've got Craig Silvey's coming. He'll be talking about Honeybee. Rosalie Ham, who wrote The Dressmaker, and we've got the film of that showing as well. And then all sorts of writers that people will be familiar with, like, Meg Mason, Sorrel and Bliss, Jessica Detman. This has been absolutely lovely. Catherine Jinks with Shelter. We've got Lynn Yearwatt. I don't know if you read The Silent Listener. That was amazing. So she's talking about that. Kelly Hawkins, Other People's Houses. Emily Maguire, Love Objects. I mean, it's just sort of, it's a
like
real,
lots.
it's a broad church. We like to make it something for everyone. And there's, other non-fiction like Charles Massey, Call of the Reed Warbler. So I just think there's an awful lot to see, Jen, and you need to book tickets to as much as you can fit into the weekend.
And how is it got a Facebook page or something like that so people can look it up?
It does. So Storyfest is Storyfest Inc. INC. And the website, if you want to see the full program details, is storyfest.org.au.
Okay, thanks for that. Sounds like, yeah, there's something for everyone.
Yeah.
And we spoke a little bit about looking at reviews, like seeing 1 and 2 star reviews and that. Do you look at your reviews a lot?
I sort of look at them in batches, I suppose. Like I'm not a person who gets deeply offended if someone doesn't like my book. To me, I write them. I've done all the work. I've liaised with my publisher. We've created the thing, which is the printed book. And then once the book goes out into the world, I don't really see it as my book anymore. I'm much more interested in how people relate to the book, what feelings, if people tell me, in this particular book's case, if people say that they laughed and cried, I'm thrilled because I laughed and cried as well. So it's like, great. Well, obviously we're on the same page. If people don't connect with it, then so be it. I don't connect with everything that I read, even if it is a bestseller and you feel a bit guilty, don't you? If you go, oh, I hate it, whatever, and it's like everyone's go, oh, it's the best book I've ever read. And you go, oh, really? So I really don't worry too much. I really look just out of curiosity, like the Goodreads example that you just referred to is really just because you can get that little snapshot and go, oh, okay, so X percent of people thought it was, gave it 4 or 5 stars, Y percent didn't, but I've never been in a situation where a book was so poorly received that it got smashed. Do you know what I mean? Like 1 or 2 bad reviews, you just kind of go, oh well, obviously that person didn't like it. They're dead to me. But I actually haven't been in a situation where a book's been panned. So I can imagine though that would just be really, really hard to pick yourself up from and to move on, and because confidence, writer's confidence is such a fragile beast that it would be just devastating to have people just go, this is the biggest load of rubbish we've ever read.
And have you found that as you've written more, you're probably less likely to take as much notice of those 1 and 2 star reviews?
I think it really depends on why they're a 1 or 2 star review too. Like, I think what you're looking for when you're getting critiqued, whether people are critiquing you, like your writing friendship group, if you like, if you, will give you different feedback to your mum and your sister, so, and most writers are actually looking for useful feedback, like this is not working because of this thing and that thing, these moving parts are not coming together. So if it's, but if someone just says, and someone has said this about one of my books, so, I just hated that character in 1 star. And so, well, fair enough, because I didn't create it to be a particularly, endearing character. So if she really didn't gel for you, then that's fair enough. So, but I think if you consistently I have spoken to writers who do put a lot more emphasis on the reviews and feedback than possibly I do. And what you're really looking for is the consistency in the feedback. This thing isn't working across 10 reviews is not the same as one person saying this thing didn't work for me. So that I don't think anyone should ever beat themselves up about reviews, or literally if someone says you are the most amazing writer that's ever walked this earth, it is also not useful. So you kind of you can't take all the accolades and ignore the criticism, or take all the criticism and ignore the accolades. You've got to sit in the middle somewhere.
And before you mention some writers that inspire you and that, I'm interested to know if maybe there's something that you've been reading lately that you'd like to recommend to us.
Oh, as I said, the Maggie O'Farrell for sure. Like, if you haven't read any Maggie O'Farrell, you need to read Maggie O'Farrell. And I was only reflecting this morning that maybe it's the Scottish or the Scottish writing thing, because she's in Edinburgh, and one of my other favourite contemporary writers is Ali Smith, the Scottish writer as well. It depends what you read for. Like, I will pick up any Candace Fox books because she's highly entertaining. She's so funny. She writes a rip-roaring plot. I would always say to people, even if I don't read a lot of crime, but I would say to anyone, pick up a Candace Fox book, pick up a Christian White, pick up a Michael Robotham. I don't read a lot of crime these days, mainly because I'm sort of a bit tired of the victimization of women and children. And I just kind of, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, fine, sort of all that stalking and all that stuff. It's just like, get a bit done with that. I'm actually about to embark on. I'm going to read the Nancy's, though. I haven't read the Nancy's.
Yeah.
I know the new one's out, so I'm like, that's something that's big for me. I'm actually going to. I have a lot of books. One of the problems with being a writer and reviewer is, like, you can see, I'm in the library at the moment, so this is kind of where all the special books go, or the favorite books go. But I've got a lounge room, I've got a dairy shed, I've got a studio, I've got a bedroom, books in all of them. And I've realised that probably I need to start going through my to be read pile, which is on shelves all over the house. It's like, I really do need to read that. I've read a lot of Margaret Atwood. I've read, I would say, most of Margaret Atwood, but I haven't read the Testaments yet. So, there's just sort of stuff that you go, I really would like to get back to that. I'm not a great rereader, but I do feel like I need to catch up a little bit with my overall reading. There's so many great books out at the moment. It's more, isn't it? And I'd like to, read Clara and the Sun. There's a whole range of stuff that you just go, haven't got to that yet. Haven't got to that. Catch up time.
I think a lot of our members can certainly relate to your to be read pile, and me included.
It's just every time you listen to one of these kind of podcasts, or it's something. Oh yeah, I haven't read that yet. Or someone was saying to me the other day, "Oh, Rachel Cusk is like the best writer in the universe." I'm like, "Oh, I haven't read any Rachel Cusk yet." It's like I failed the exam. You go, okay, I'll put that on my list as well. We will never live long enough to read all the books that are available to us, no matter how much lockdown we live in. It will just never be enough.
Yeah, exactly. Just reminding people before we finish, if you do have any more questions, please type them in comments and you'll have a chance to win the Dressmakers of Yarrandera, thanks to HarperCollins. Would you like to tell us how people can keep in touch with you and know what's happening with your books?
Absolutely, especially if I'm still lucky enough to go out and about. I'm doing quite a few bookstores and libraries, and I'm really excited because I'm going to regional New South Wales a bit more this time, which is fantastic. So I'll be going to Port Macquarie in July, and I'll be going to Parkes in October. I've never been to Parkes. I've never been. Like, I'm so excited. So yay, Parkes Library. And I'll be in Goulburn week after next as well. So I have Instagram, Facebook, probably a little bit of Twitter. I'm not mad on Twitter. Mainly Instagram, where all the feel goods are, like Instagram. Everyone's so nice to each other. And my Facebook page. So Meredith Jaffe author is my handle. So you'll find me there. And I look like this in pretty much every photo as well. So,
so you'll be easy
although I'm
to
particularly
find.
well coiffed this morning, the hair worked really well. Those days you go, yay, the hair worked.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to everyone else who joined in and asked some questions. We had some really great questions.
We did. Thank you so much for being here on a Sunday morning, everyone.
Thank you, and look forward to maybe being able to talk to you another time about any new books you have out.
I'd love to do that. Hopefully, all going well, the new book will be out in May next year. So
sounds good.
If it's not, it'll probably be because the rewrites were horrendous. I shouldn't have been quite so optimistic about the quality I was handing in.
Well, thanks everyone, and bye.
Goodbye. Thanks, Jackie.